Here comes the, here comes the, here comes the, click, click. Here comes the, here comes the, here comes the. Click, click, boom.
Alright everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, what have you. Today we're going to be talking about, if you didn't already guess from the beginning of the video, explosive builds. Now this doesn't have to be necessarily sticky bomb builds or mortar builds, it can be basically just anything to do with explosives and the like. So a lot of skill builds basically. Now, of course, this doesn't relate just to PvP like you might have saw from the intro, and it doesn't necessarily have to be PvE. It can be whatever you choose. Obviously, I'm going to be going over a couple builds, and the whole point of this video is basically comparing explosive builds versus, Ninjabike builds, Memento builds, and just regular high-end style builds. So, hopefully you guys can take something from this video, learn a little bit, maybe find something that you kind of, I guess, find more to your liking or a little bit more to your style, whatever it may be. Hopefully you can take something out of this video. Now, just to get some of the basic information out of the way, I am going to be doing all of my testing in the bank mission, and I'm also going to be basically giving you all of my damage numbers off of damage to health. So I'm not going to be trying to get any damage to armor buff numbers or anything like that. And of course, the numbers that I will be giving to you will be damage numbers based off of everything on a specific build being fully procced. So if I'm using the capacitor, it's going to be at 40 stacks. If I'm, using something else, it's going to be at max stacks or fully buffed. It's not going to be numbers based off of the base starting point. Now, of course, this actually comes at a pretty good time for me. Actually, I kind of pretty much planned it this way because I was looking for a way to get rid of, the last of the things in Chunks League. And so I basically knew I needed something to do with shade kills, and I needed something to take out Black Tusk Elites. So, making some explosive skill builds and testing them out in the various invaded missions, well, it made it a little bit easier to get through this stuff. Now, of course, starting off with my first build, this is going to be a Ninjabike explosive build. Running 2 pieces of Empress International, I get that third piece with the 10% skill efficiency. With my Wyvernware, I'm getting that extra 10% of status effects. And of course, Grupo Somber is a great piece to have because now I can get 15% extra explosive damage. And this is kind of one of those pieces that, people look at when they want to build a Ninjabike build because they think that 15% is going to be very huge for their build overall. And of course, we're going to then wrap it up with China Light Gloves, which are going to give you that extra 10% skill haste, and of course the Ninjabike backpack to basically just tie it all together. Now, the talent that I am using on my chest piece is of course going to be Glass Cannon, which gives me that 25% amplified damage. And yes, you do take 50% amplified damage from enemies, so it is a bit risky. And of course, I'm also using Capacitor for those 40 stacks, which gives me like 60% skill damage. And I'm using the Demolition Specialization, which gives me that 10% explosive damage. So on total, I do have 40% explosive damage. So that's 15% from China, 15% from Grupo, and 10% from the Demolitionist. For the skills, the main skill that I'm going to be testing pretty much across all of these builds is going to be the Mortar Turret or Artillery Turret. And this is just to keep things very simple. The secondary skill is going to be kind of changing based on the needs of that specific build. Now, overall, this Ninjabike explosive build did not perform poorly, but it was definitely not where I was hoping it would be. In terms of actual damage from my mortar turret, it ranked 4th on this list. So there were 3 other builds that had stronger mortar turrets. The one bright spot of this build, though, is that it did have the second highest gun damage of all the builds that I tested. And this is due to 2 key factors. One, for a skill build, I do have a red core from the Ninjabike. And I'm also using Glass Cannon, which gives me that 25% amplified damage. So this does increase the amount of weapon damage that I can push out. Now, it's not like game changing, it's not hugely noticeable. It's generally only 9,000 damage per bullet more. It's not a huge amount. It's something to take note of. But again, it's not really something that this build is relying on because it is so squishy. So I would consider the fact that the mortar damage that it does is a lot less than other builds to be the main problem of this build, considering that's really your bread and butter. This is a build that's designed to be explosive, right? I mean, obviously you're designed to do high amounts of damage while putting yourself in as little risk as possible. This, of course, has less damage than other explosive builds that put themselves at equal risk, or some builds that don't even have the same amount of risk. And that's kind of, you know, a big problem. This is pretty much the I guess the epitome of an explosive Ninjabike build, and yet it left me slightly disappointed. That's not to say it's not good or you can't use it, or if you don't have any of the other builds, it's not something that you can, you know, play around with. It's just there's other better builds to shoot for. Now, the second build that I'm going to be showing you, again, you know, we're looking at Demolitionist and Capacitor, and this is basically my pretty much go-to explosive build. This is my super squishy glass cannon, you know, destroyer of worlds, and this is basically the build that I've used in PvP. It's something that I occasionally use in group play, but it's not really something that I use as a solo player. Again, just because it is so very squishy. Now, what this build is going to have is obviously 3 pieces of Empress International, China Light Wyvernware, and the main thing that I'm going to look at with this build is the fact that I have my exotic as the Waveform. Now, of course, this build is a mix of skill damage, skill haste, and status effects, obviously because I want that bleed. My backpack does have perfect shock and awe, which does deal a good amount of damage, especially considering I'm applying status effects. Again, I am using glass cannon for that 25% amplified damage. And of course, Wyvernware is going to give me that 30% skill damage that kind of flips between my skills. Now, it really just depends on what kind of skills you're going to use, but when this skill, or when this talent is active on your mortar turret, you will notice a significant increase in the amount of damage that it will deal. Because of this, because of these 3 talents that are really great for skill damage, Shock and Awe, Glass Cannon, and of course the Waveform talent, Alternating Current, we are going to get a massive amount of damage on our mortar turret. And this is actually the #1 damage build for a mortar turret, at least as far as my testing goes. I was almost able to hit 8 million damage with a mortar. So just under 8 million per blast on enemy health. Now, of course, this didn't really help much with the gun damage because obviously this is focused more on just skill damage, pure and simple. And as such, it did have the second weakest gun damage of all of the builds. Now, this isn't something that I worry about because, again, this is a glass cannon build. This is exactly what the Ninjabike build that I just showed you is supposed to be. I'm not shooting that much. I need really high damage on my mortar turret, which this is what I want, right? I want this to be the focus of the build, the mortar turret, and this Waveform build simply offers the biggest bang for your buck possible with a mortar turret as far as my testing of these 5 builds goes. Now, of course, there is room for improvement on the build. There are some roles that could be better, and of course, I don't really put much emphasis on the expertise system or whatever that stuff's called. Very few of the items that I have or skills that I have or any of that stuff have actually been invested into. So if you did have that, you know, like 20% skill damage or 20% armor or 20% weapon damage or whatever, obviously you're going to have better numbers than me. I, just don't spend the time to really perfect those things because they don't really matter to me that much. If I need them to beat the content, then I'm probably already doing something wrong. Those are just to make it easier. So with that in mind, I want to move on to my third build, which is another Ninjabike build, except this time I am using Future Initiative. Yes, that's right. My mask, my gloves, and my knee pads are going to be Future Initiative. I'm going to have a chest piece that is going to be China Light with Kinetic Momentum, and of course I'm going to be throwing in the Picaro's holster. Again, everything else will basically be the same. I'm going to be using the Demolition Specialization with the Capacitor. Now, what this build basically allows me to do is improve on my squishiness. So getting rid of Glass Cannon immediately frees up a lot of possibilities for this build because I don't have to worry about just getting one shot by everything. Now, since I don't have to worry about getting one shot by everything, I've decided to invest into healing because well, I can actually kind of be tanky. And yes, with the additional 2 armor cores, that may not seem like a lot, but the fact that I can actually heal that armor constantly is a huge plus to this build. Again, thanks to the Ninjabike, I only need 3 pieces of Future Initiative to get the 4-piece bonus, which gives me that 15% total weapon damage and total skill damage. Of course, when you combine that with the China Light that I have, which gives me the 15% explosive damage, and the Kinetic Momentum, which gives me 60% repair skills and 30% skill damage, I'm looking at a pretty nice setup here. Now, because of the combination of Kinetic Momentum and Future Initiative, I have used that second skill slot to give me the Fixer Drone. Now, the Fixer Drone is going to be constantly putting out healing for me while I'm using this build, and allowing me to use those 2 weapon damage cores that I have, in addition to the capacitors, gaining weapon damage from each skill tier. So what I end up having is a pretty competent build. I won't be pushing out as much DPS as, say, the Ninja explosive build with glass cannon, but I will be dealing a good amount, just under about 2000k per bullet less. But as far as the mortar turret goes, it will be the least amount of damage of all of these builds. Yes, so as far as that goes, if I'm kind of relying a little bit more on being a DPS dealer and staying, in the fight rather than avoiding cover and relying on my mortar turret entirely. So this does allow me to actually engage enemies. It does allow me to engage in a little bit of face tanking, and I can generally stay out of cover firing my weapon a lot more often, a lot longer, and I can take bullets while basically just dealing this DPS. And that basically recovers a lot of the damage that I would have lost because of the weaker turret. Now, overall, I do like this build. I think this is a much better build than the glass cannon builds, and I would probably use it a lot more often as a solo player. I would also use it a lot more in team play because obviously I am getting that 15% bonus for my allies as well, as long as they're at full health, and I can keep them healed. If I was going to be part of a dedicated team, yeah, I'd probably put on a hive just to heal my allies and keep them with the 15% buff. But as a solo player, I probably, would just use the drone. I do have the repair skill mods on there. However, with the repair skill mods, it also comes with the knowledge, that you should probably know if you've been watching my videos, and that's incoming repair on this build is probably going to be a little bit more beneficial. Now, I am getting 30% repair skills from Future Initiative, and of course, depending on how many rolls of repair skills I have, throughout the build, since I've got 3 slots for mods, if I have at least 60% repair skills on my build itself, then putting 3 mods to roughly equal about 60% in incoming repairs is going to be the greatest return. So if I am playing solo and I at least have 60% repair skills on the build from my mod slots or my gear or whatever, then I'm going to want to invest some into incoming repairs. At least 2 probably on this build, but if you've got a little bit extra, definitely make all of your mods incoming repairs. That's just going to give you the greatest return on your healing. Again, overall, I like this build, I like this combination, and I like it because it's something I've used in the past, and it's something that I actually have, and I was just trying to make a Ninjabike version of it to see if it really could compete. And the truthful answer is, looking at my next build, you're going to see that it's not really that impressive compared to other combinations you can make. So we're going to take a look at my Mento build, as I call it. Now, this is going to be a healing explosive damage build. We're going to be looking at, obviously I've got the same things, Demolitionist and Capacitor. I've got my Wyvern Mask with skill damage, status effects, and incoming repairs. Of course, I get the skill damage from Wyvern Wear. My backpack is going to be Memento, obviously weapon damage, armor, skill tier, and I've got an incoming repairs mod. Of course, all those delicious bonuses that I get from, kill confirmed. My gloves are going to be one of 3 Empress International with repair skills and damage. And of course, I've got my chest piece, China Light, again, explosive damage, status effects, skill damage, incoming repairs, and Kinetic Momentum. Fantastic talent. And then, of course, second piece of Empress International, skill damage, repair skills. And my third piece, Empress, skill damage, and status effects. Now, the thing to note is that this build does have the weakest gun damage, even when Memento is fully buffed, of all the 5 builds that I tested. And this is mostly due to the fact that I don't have glass cannon. So if I had glass cannon on this build, I would be doing a lot more damage. But I want to be tankier and be able to actually, stay out of cover a little bit more. So I am losing out to that. And of course, this is why the Ninja Picaro holster build did a little bit more damage. That's because obviously it has one more weapon damage core than this Memento combo. However, the mortar damage that I'm looking at is the second highest mortar damage of all the builds. So I am getting a huge amount of mortar damage, significantly more than the Ninja Future Picaro build. And I'm getting the ability to be a lot more tankier. So this build does have better healing. It has basically just a better drone or hive, whatever you choose to go with. And because of that, I can generally stay out a little bit more than the Ninja build. I'm hitting for more damage with my mortar. And overall, I'm getting, that 3% repair from, or I guess I should say 3% armor regen from the Memento backpack, which is going to be fantastic. Plus, it also has better skill haste on the build as a whole, meaning that I can get my turret back a little bit quicker. So again, just overall, I would say this version of a build is much better than the Ninja versions that I've been using. And with that being said, I'm going to go into my final build, which is my Boom Heals build. This is my Memento built around 4 pieces of Future Initiative and a China Light chest piece. Obviously, again, like you saw with my Ninja Future Initiative build, I get that 15% total weapon or total skill damage. Of course, all the buffs from Memento, and most of my rolls on my Future Initiative are all going to be skill damage. Now, of course, having that repair skill mod and having all these little bonuses definitely makes a very nice and usable build. Just like, my other 2 previous builds, the healing on this build is very good, allowing me to actually get out and face tank a little bit. Yeah, I do have a little bit less armor than I did with the Picaro and Ninja build, but I am getting much better healing. And of course, since this build is actually set up more for a team play kind of organization, I do have the hive on there, and I do have repair skills on my mods. This obviously allows me to repair my allies a little bit easier. However, if I was going solo, I would use the fixer drone, and I would put incoming repairs, the blue mods, on my gear slots. And that would just give me even better healing. Of course, again, combined with all the buffs from the Memento, which, that 30% skill efficiency, you have to remember, it gives you, skill health, skill damage, status effects, repair skills, and I think it's skill duration. So, yeah, those buffs give you a lot. And then, of course, when you combine it with Future Initiative, which gives you that 30% skill repair, I mean, you're getting a very significant amount of healing, especially if you combine it with incoming repairs. It's just going to be a very good build, and it's going to be a team buff build, a team healer build, and basically just a AoE spammable damage build. Fantastic. It's pretty much everything that I enjoy about these kinds of games. Now, where does this build generally stack up compared to the other ones? Well, it doesn't deal the strongest mortar damage, but it's still one of the top contenders, I would say, for probably the best build. In fact, it's either the best build or the second best build as far as, I guess, what your concerns are. Now, if you're just looking for pure damage, yeah, I'd probably say go with the Waveform with the glass cannon kind of build, because that is just going to give you the most damage from your skills. But if you're looking for a more self-sufficient or, better for a team kind of thing, this is probably going to be the best option. Now, this build does have the 3rd strongest mortar damage of the builds that I've been showing you. It's only slightly less than the Memento explosive build. So, Memento was 2nd, but this is 3rd, and it's only losing to that build by like 1,300 damage per explosion. So honestly, it's almost insignificant, the damage loss versus the Memento explosive build. However, I guess the most notable thing about this Memento Future build is, when you are at full armor, you are dealing the most gun damage of all the builds, period. In fact, you're basically dealing almost 10,000 more damage per bullet than any of the other builds, including the glass cannon builds. So if you are actually, good at avoiding taking damage, you can deal a large amount of damage with this build. Because honestly, you can combine that high damage from the capacitor and the ability to stagger enemies with your mortar, and basically just, not have to worry about taking damage. As long as you can kind of keep the enemies angled in the right way and avoid taking damage directly to lose that future initiative buff, you're going to be able to just plow through a lot of these things. Of course, if you wanted to, be more careful about it, you can still basically rely on your mortar turret to do a lot of the damage for you without being too risky. But your healing is always going to be really top notch. Obviously, Memento is going to give you really great heals, Future Initiative is going to give you great heals, and of course, Kinetic Momentum is going to give you great heals. So Kinetic Momentum, Memento, and Future Initiative, yes, fantastic heals from this build, whether it's team play or solo. Now, I know I used a lot of generalized terms there and didn't really go over any specific hard numbers, so let's kind of go over those rankings from basically the worst to best. So, starting off with the worst mortar damage, we've got the Ninja Future Picaro's build, which is going to be a mortar damage of 5,640,000. Then we're going to be having the Ninja Explosive build, which is going to be hitting for 6,366,000. So again, the two lowest mortar damage builds were the Ninja builds. And moving into third place, we've got the Memento Future Initiative build, which is going to be hitting with a mortar of 6,714,000. Second place is going to be the Memento Explosive build with 6,716,000. So again, 16,000 versus 14,000. Not too much of a difference there. But of course, the number one slot is going to be that Waveform glass cannon build, which I managed to hit for a whopping 7,939,000, almost 8 million. If I'd probably, improved a couple of the rolls, I could probably hit 8 million, and I could definitely hit 8 million if I invested some expertise into my mortar turret. Now, of course, looking at the gun damage side of things, for my least amount of gun damage, which is going to be the, sadly, Memento Explosive build, my gun damage on a target at health is going to be 129,000. Of course, not too far from that, we're going to have the Waveform build, which is going to be 130,000. Moving up to third place, we're going to have the Ninja Future Picaro's build, which is going to be hitting for 137,000. And then the Ninja Explosive build, which is going to be hitting for 139,000. Of course, we can kind of see that the Ninja did have a slight edge in the DPS categories there, at least, compared to the two weakest ones. But the Memento Future Initiative build did have the highest amount of weapon damage, sitting at 148,000. So almost 10,000 over the strongest Ninja Explosive build. Now, overall, my highest recommendations are the Memento Explosive build or the Memento Future Initiative build. This is just because it combines the best, combination of survivability and damage. Yeah, of course, glass cannon builds can have 2 damage skills, and that can be really handy, but a lot of the times people like to have a little bit more combination than that. Obviously, you want to get in there with your weapons, and the Memento healing builds just allow this a lot. Of course, again, I would probably recommend the Ninjabike Future Initiative build with Picaro's holster, if that's something you're into as well. If you actually want to do gunplay and skill play and have some heals, those are great combinations for you because they just allow you to do it all. So that's something I guess would be, the most fun for any build because you're basically just active all the time. You can use your skills, you can use your gun, you can use your heals. I mean, it just keeps you in the fight and makes the game more interesting. And of course, when you have that kind of synergy, it allows you to push through content a lot faster, which makes it just more fun overall. No one likes to spend like 80 minutes in a mission or something like that. So, so having this good combination where you don't really need to hide and worry all the time just makes it far more playable. Now, anyway, like I said, the two best I would say in my opinion are the Memento Explosive and the Memento Future Initiative. And this is just because overall they're better than the Picaro Ninjabike build. With the Ninjabike, I just wanted to see how it would compare, And yeah, you can't really make up in brand bonuses or gear set bonuses for that talent loss. That 20% total skill damage really obviously comes in handy. And of course, you know, losing that exotic slot when you could have like a waveform on there for really peak damage, yeah, you're losing a lot there. But anyway, yeah, I thought it was interesting to see that the Ninjabike, as far as my skill build testing goes, really didn't quite match up. Now, that doesn't mean you can't find a combination that you might like a little bit more, but as far as what I've seen so far, the Ninjabike is not something that I really want on my skill builds. There might be something out there that I haven't quite looked at yet, but overall, yeah, I do feel that they are probably significantly weaker, and having that talent loss on the backpack is basically just going to be a huge detriment. And, you know, obviously most skill builds are pretty squishy anyway. If you're looking at, you know, PvP or whatever, maybe you'll find some bonuses there, I guess, because look, the Ninjabike is designed for PvP. At least it's more prominently beneficial to PvP. And this is because you don't need to activate those brand or gear set bonuses. You know, some of the really good talents, you need to activate them. You know, like Spotter, obviously you need to pulse a target, and if they have pulse resistance, then you get nothing. If you need to apply a status effect, but your target is 100% hazard protected, well, then you're not going to be able to apply a status effect to get that bonus. And if you need to actually kill an enemy to activate something, then you actually have to kill the enemy first. And that's not going to help you at the beginning of a battle. So the Ninjabike simply allows you to have more buffs active at the start of a fight when they might be more needed. And in this situation, yeah, the Ninjabike might be good for PvP skill builds. And I would say probably not glass cannon builds, but, you know, maybe a little bit longer lasting armored styled skill builds. You know, that's just kind of my opinion. I think the Ninjabike armored skill builds in PvP, probably a good idea. Other skill builds for general reasons, yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence about if they're actually going to be good or usable. But anyway, guys, thank you for watching this video, and I hope I'll see you in the next one.